It's an unusual sight for an airport in Australia. Tibetan Buddhist monks and nuns. The flag of Tibet. Tibetan people waiting with gifts. It's not every day that the Dalai Lama visits Australia. It's not every day that Australia's Tibetan population get to greet their spiritual and political leader. This tour of the Dalai Lama included a special focus on young people. In Sydney, 5 young people were chosen after they had submitted a question via the internet. In Melbourne, 5 school students were chosen. The Dalai Lama's tour was to be for young people and for those with a young heart.
Oh, I come from sky. Then become Dalai Lama. Now, I often used to telling people, some people call me God King. Nonsense. Some people call me, say, living Buddha. Nonsense. Right? The real one is just another human being.
The Dalai Lama is a man who represents spirituality in its most practical and yet its most reflective ways. He's a person who has been through trauma, has been through difficulties and still practices some of the most fundamental values, some of the most spiritual values that there are. And he has certainly an attraction for young people because he comes with a set of guidelines, not a set of directions and rules and regulations.
Would you please make welcome your host for tonight, Will Anderson!
I'm worried about the future of our planet. I think we have, especially environmentally, we have stuffed up this planet. I mean, if this Earth was a rental, we so wouldn't get our bond back.
The worst thing that could happen in a stand-up comedy is basically that you can get heckled or not paid. The worst thing that happens here...
Television presenter and comedian Will Anderson was the compere for the youth event at the Sydney Recital Hall.
This is not my usual sort of gig. I was, to be honest, very nervous because, you know, it's doing a stand-up comedy event, you know, basically the worst thing that could happen to you is you could, you know, get heckled or not get paid. You know, I'm figuring if I'd stuffed up this gig, the Dalai Lama has the ability to send me back as a pig next time. So yeah, there was a little bit of pressure, I think. Although I think if there's ever a night where you know that mistakes are going to be forgiven, you know, it's a night like this. You know, it's an audience with the Dalai Lama. It's not an audience with Darth Vader.
Hi everyone, how you going? Excited? I'm so nervous. I couldn't be more nervous. I just met the Dalai Lama backstage and I had that moment, he was talking about the weather and honest to God, this is a true story. I just went, so do you have like winter and summer robes? I'm so coming back as a frog. Or someone in human nature. But,
Reach your mind, put it on my eyes, in a meditative style. The guru said, "Doctor, you got my Well, recently I've done a lot of study on Tibet and Buddhism and become a lot more aware of the actual real situation that's going on in Tibet. And I just think in this time, this era, people should not be subject to that kind of oppression.
Your Holiness, our first question from our group of young people who were chosen is from Justine.
Your Holiness, the world we live in is riddled with conflict. Colour, religion, class and sexuality are among the issues today's generation are faced with. Due to these conflicts, people everywhere have and continue to endure terrible sufferings. How in this world of some 6 billion people, consisting of such diverse cultures and beliefs, can the human race find peace and reconciliation to move forward without suffering? Well, I think people of our generation, I mean, we live in an era where everything is technological, it's so fast moving. We need something to grasp, to hold on to keep our spirituality alive.
There are so many different religions, so many sort of nationality, or so many sort of, political system or economy system, and different living standard and different sort of education background, but all just same human being.
I think he's trying to make everyone aware of what really goes on in the world, to make themselves aware of the other side of life, not just the part everyone seems so adamant to achieve to be successful. He wants everyone to realise that there is an inner self, inner peace is more important than all that external stuff.
It's a sense of, this is who I am, and around me the world can be in conflict and in turmoil. I know that sometimes established ways of doing things haven't worked for me, haven't worked for my family, haven't come through for me. So I need to meditate and reflect and find the inner resources in order to go out and meet that world, in order to deal with that world. And so many more and more young people are turning to teachings and meditations such as those of the Dalai Lama to give them that strength, that resilience.
Meditation in Australia is no longer seen as foreign or exotic. In both Eastern and Western cultures, it's widely accepted as a way of coming to a greater understanding of the self and the world. Young people across religious traditions, and those with none, are finding meditation a useful tool in coping with life.
There's a lot of peer group pressure, there's a lot of expectations on young people, and meditation really helps you just find out, become more familiar with yourself, you know, various states of mind, emotions and things like that. And it's really quite useful for dealing with those and helping to relax and calm down. The commitment to meditation is much like getting fit. You know, it's something that you do have to chip away at every day. Like if you want to get fit in a jogging sense, you've got to jog every day. So particularly when we first start out, it may not be easy, so we have to make a commitment to really see the benefits of meditating and then working your way at it. So maybe just 5 minutes a day initially, but the importance is do it every day.
I asked him a question about what link he thinks spirituality has to play in social change, and I guess I asked him that because I personally realising more and more that spirituality has a role to play in social change and social justice. Yeah.
I think peace, world peace, very much related with inner peace. So I believe the true inner peace, genuine world peace can achieve. So then question, how to start inner peace? So therefore, I think world peace must start from individual inner peace.
I think spirituality has a role to play in social change because I think social change is all about relating to people.
If you really, truly love God, then you must show love, kindness towards same creature, isn't it? So therefore, I think the real message is that love towards fellow human being. So the message of love, compassion, forgiveness, tolerance, contentment, self-discipline, all major religion talks, all these subjects, all these things.
We're here today to take part in a forum that celebrates wisdom, tolerance, courage, happiness and hope.
Peace, yes.
What's happening in Tibet?
Young people respond to openness in a very instinctive way. It's as we grow older that we tend to sort of close down. And the Dalai Lama's obviously maintained as part of his philosophy a very deliberate openness.
Sigrid Thornton, the compere for the Melbourne Schools event, is one of Australia's most popular actors. Most recently, the success of the television series Sea Change has made Sigrid a household name.
Please welcome His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama of Tibet, Tenzin Gyatso. I'd like to invite Danny Alakis from Brunswick Secondary College to ask the first question.
Your Holiness, it seems that many people are solving their problems with quick fixes, solutions that only create more problems. Why is it that we do things that will only make us feel worse? People often feel that there's no way out of their problem because that's all they see, their problem. He said that all you need to really do is just look at the broader perspective, and you'll see that there's other good things around that problem. Whereas what most people seem to do is, again, just concentrate on the problem. And when you do that, this is what he said, words lose all meaning, and yeah, you just get in deeper and deeper.
I feel our wave approach, when we are facing some problem, we just, they think only that area without knowing the other factors involved.
The quick fix again comes through with the drug taking stuff. You know, like if I take my ecstasy on Saturday night, I'll feel good all Saturday. I can dance till Sunday morning. And then by Tuesday, I'm going into an Ecce Tuesday, they tell me, where they're in a slump, and sometimes in my own lecture theatre, they'll sit there and look very, very miserable.
Having heard what he said, you attack things better, and you're a bit calmer about going at finding tasks.
And what young people are saying is we want ongoing, sustainable skills and ways of seeing the world and ways of reflecting on the world and ways of getting out there as activists. That means that it's going to be a long-term thing. We'll be in there for the long haul.
So this is my feeling. Otherwise, very difficult. I don't know. We have to study each by each. Next question.
The 14th Dalai Lama, Tenzin Gyatso, lives in exile in Dharamsala in northern India. Following the invasion of Tibet by the Chinese in 1959, he came to India as a refugee. A Nobel Peace Prize winner, the Dalai Lama has captured the hearts and minds of people throughout the world for his wisdom and peace advocacy. Tibetan people in Australia number less than 300. All have come as refugees, although the government is loath to grant them this status. Timay Riggson's father fled to India from Tibet with his parents in 1959 when the Chinese invaded their homeland.
I think almost any Tibetan would lay down their life for him. And, well, because I'm Tibetan, and I've been raised amongst Tibetans, and I've spoken to Tibetans, and I've read stuff about Tibet, and I feel Tibetan, well, he means that to me as well. I primarily consider myself to be Australian. I love Australian culture, I love everything about it. People say it's the best country in the world, and I agree. But at the same time, there's one thing about Australian culture that I love the most, and that's its flexibleness. So I can be Australian, I can love Australia, I can play my footy, but at the same time I can be and celebrate my Tibetanness.
In the Victorian country town of Seymour, Vanessa Austin was chosen by her classmates to represent her school at the Melbourne Schools event. She asked the Dalai Lama, how can we passively resist and resolve the conflict that has led to terrorism and to avoid the use of military warfare?
It was just a great privilege and a great honour to meet him, and I'm so glad that I was chosen by my class to be able to get that opportunity to do it.
So the 20th century, almost, I think, like century of war, century of destruction.
He referred to the World War I and World War II and the September 11 attack, and just was basically saying that we need more self-compassion and everything like that, and think more with our brain and more with our hearts to sort of overcome all them things.
So perhaps because of our awful, painful experience, now everywhere, the desire of peace, non-violence, is really now, I think, growing.
It was great. Just meeting him and being near him, he just made you feel really relaxed and really happy, and just really made you feel at ease.
Yes, next question.
I guess when I was speaking to him, I didn't think of him as you know, the reincarnation of Buddha or the God King. I've read a lot of his work, and I tried to adapt his principle of greeting people as people in reverse. You know, I thought that surely if that's what he thinks, then that's the way he would like to be treated as well. And obviously I knew that it'd be pretty intimidating for him meeting somebody as, you know, famous and spectacular as me. So I was just trying to put him at ease, really. I was just going, look, if you want my autograph, here it is. You know, let's get it out of the way, you know, so that when we get on stage, you're not fawning all over me.
Thank you all for coming along. It's wonderful to see so many people here. It is really exciting. I think the Dalai Lama tapped something in Australians. It's something especially that we used to have, the idea of a fair go and the idea of looking for somebody to be inspiring. And it's a really hard thing to convince people that the world's okay, isn't it? I always think, how will I act, you know, when I'm older if I've got a kid and they come into my room and they're like, Dad, I heard a noise downstairs, I'm really scared. And I'll be like, oh, crap. Crap, I'm scared too, son. Why don't you go check? Oh, come on, they won't hurt a kid. But it's really exciting to be here. I think the Dalai Lama's, it's been amazing when His Holiness has been in this country, just the people who've come out and the excitement. But I think we see something in him as Australians that is particularly, you know, if he wasn't from Tibet, that he might be an Aussie. I think we do. And do you know why? Did you read in the paper the other day when he said, when somebody asked him, they said, Your Holiness, what is the secret to serenity and peace? And he just went, more holidays. How Aussie is that? If he'd then quoted Don Bradman's batting average, we would have elected him Prime Minister.
Your Holiness, what advice would you give to students to help them find inner peace?
Oh, that's difficult. I don't know. That's difficult to say. I think more holiday. Is
His immediate response to the question was to take more holidays, and that was a very popular response for the whole audience. Everyone laughed.
I think sense of competition. I think in the education field, you need sense of competition. But another sort of sense of competition, in order to you get first, there's some kind of negative feeling or attitude towards other in order to stop them. That sense of competition is wrong.
Like, when I find myself being a little not in a peace, like a little stressed or whatever, or worried or not too peaceful, I think about those things that he says more, and yeah, I always keep them in mind, and I feel extremely lucky to have had the opportunity, and it's so special. But now that it's happened, afterwards I felt like I was really sad that I would never see him again. And I don't know, I doubt that I'll see him again.
You know, we're surrounded here by a university of young people. Now, all of them have been through a very ruthless competitive situation called the VCE. They can tell you about some of the hardest times they experienced during that year just to get here. Here, they're competing with sometimes 1,000 students in the same course. So there's a level of that they can handle and manage. But there's another level that they talk to me about of how it actually gouges out your soul. It actually makes you feel ruthless and unworthy and competitive, and all sorts of underhanded things go on. That's the side that we actually try to alleviate. And we tell young people, in this world, you can only do the best to your ability. There are many directions you can take, and that you have to find, you're not competing against anyone else. In the end, in the long run, you can just get out there and do what you can do.
The annual Tibetan Film Festival is a popular way for Australians to become familiar with both Tibetan culture and the teachings of the Dalai Lama.
Tibetan Film Festival is the main reason we hold it is to raise awareness about the issue of Tibet and the plight of Tibetan people, and so we show a range of documentaries and feature films on that topic to educate Australian public about what's happened there and to try and get them to support the cause of Tibet. I think his messages on how to lead our lives and how to show compassion and how to be responsible for what we do in the world today is probably the only solution that I can see for this world to turn into a better place. And
Your Holiness, our next question is from Shane, who's sitting here.
Your Holiness, in my involvement with suicide prevention programs, I've met a lot of young people that feel that there's nothing to live for. As a man who always comes across so happy and full of joy, what would you say to those people in need of inspiration?
I think suicide in Australia is a really big problem, especially with youth. I think we've seen that increased rates of youth suicide over the last few years, and it's something that we really need to act as a community to try and prevent.
children from childhood provide every human affection.
I think that the Dalai Lama as a leader, not just a spiritual leader, just as a man with logic and common sense in those areas, can really give us inspiration and advice about how we can go about preventing suicide and stopping such a tragic occurrence in the lucky country like Australia.
Many young people are searching for inner peace. Many young people talk to me in my projects about the need to find who you are, the self, feeling good in yourself, feeling centred in yourself, and feeling like sometimes the external ways of finding peace have not come through for them. They are facing a whole lot of external problems around families or society or economics or gender issues or sexuality. When we're talking about depression and suicide and drug taking, we're talking about lots of young people who feel that they don't know who they are inside and are seeking support and are seeking a sense of self and peace.
When I first met the Dalai Lama, it is a moment in your life where you know that there was a lot of people there and they were all, wanted to ask him big questions. And even questions were asked today, about spirituality or about, race or, love and those sort of questions. And I met him and he was talking about that he enjoyed the cold weather. And the first thing that came into my mind, and I just said it. So this was the first thing I ever said to the Dalai Lama when I met him. I said, "So do you have winter and summer robes?" It just occurred to me that, that you probably would need different ones. And the great thing was that suddenly I'm just going, yeah, that's right, I'm the fashion correspondent to the Dalai Lama. I bet in his entire years of travelling the world, nobody's ever just gone, so, winter, summer, flannelette? But it was that moment, he explained to me the story of them and it was great. He was backstage, and this is when you knew that today was going to be fun, was he suddenly just got, when it's cold, and he started wrapping it around his head and like doing little impersonations and stuff. And you just go, well, this is a man who wants to celebrate life, wants to have a laugh, and why wouldn't he? That's the principle that he's working on is, happiness. So of course he wants to celebrate life, and that, I guess, in very, very different ways, but they're very similar things to what I do. As a comedian, my major pursuit is to make people happy. Now, he does it on a whole different level and a whole different understanding, but in that moment, you do actually see something that's similar in between those two things, and so there is a little bit of a connection there, and he has this gorgeous giggle, and I noticed at one stage when he said something that I was particularly amused by and was giggling away in my big high-pitched laugh, he just looked at me and sort of nodded like, yes, I like to hear somebody laugh that loud. So.
Around the world, there are 34 million people who are refugees or internally displaced persons. They have fled their homes because of war, persecution, and human rights abuses.
My question was a very personal one. And I think also it's important not just for refugees, but also for all people who have experienced bad things in their life, anything in their lives. I think I have great respect for His Holiness because he is a refugee himself, and he took such bad experience, such terrible experience as being a refugee, and made it into something positive, something really good. That's what I found so amazing about him.
Your Holiness, our next question comes from Amina.
Your Holiness, I originally came from Bosnia and I'm now living in Australia. For all people who have been through war and experienced what it means to be a refugee, can you please tell me how it is possible to forgive?
Then the keeping ill feeling in our heart is no use. Now, so I feel that's the real meaning of tolerance, real meaning of forgiveness.
I think he's really speak to all of us, not just for young people, not just for Australian or people in Western countries, but for all the world, because his philosophy is, as such, speaks to all people throughout the world.
So we try to maintain affection or compassion towards so-called enemy, but at the same time, so you see, not keeping ill feeling, deliberately try to try to prevent development of hatred.
Well, I suppose it was very topical. There seems to be a lot of dehumanising going on for refugees and asylum seekers, and not just in this country, but for us in this country a lot, especially by political figures and the media. And so I thought it was something, instead of all this them and boat people and things like that, that we could actually get for the youth and any adult, I suppose, who was there, to get a sense of he's this political figure, won a Nobel Peace Prize, respected by people worldwide, and he's a refugee.
Your Holiness, as the world's most famous refugee, how do you feel that we can help spread compassion for the millions of people who are fleeing persecution in the world today?
So he mainly said that a lot of the division today is caused by poverty and the class divisions between the rich and the poor, so the haves and the have-nots, however you want to phrase it, and that more understanding. And when you've got countries like the US, who are major capital powers, have a lot of money, but yet in their own country there's poverty, and that leads to a lot of crime, that there needs to be more understanding.
Some of our refugee and asylum-seeking young people talk about the torture and the trauma that they've been through, and really come to a realisation that unless they do forgive, unless they can move on, it's a little bit like having a scar on your arm. You could actually gouge out your skin and your flesh and get to the bone, and a doctor can come along and do the surgery and repair it. Now, the memory is always going to be there. Your feeling of what that pain was is going to be there. But what a lot of young people are saying is, we've got to move on. Let's remember it. Let's forgive, and let's move on.
Your Holiness, what is the most significant moment in your life?
The day I left Tibet, Lhasa, that was quite painful.
I think what is the most defining moment in anyone's life is really moving to here. So we've asked it sort of amongst our friends, sort of as like a thing, and then I thought, wow, imagine hearing what like such a beautiful, compassionate person such as the Dalai Lama, like what his most defining moment would be. Yeah, it was a bit daunting to meet such a famous person that I had so much respect for, but he was so warm and so just beautiful that I wasn't, when I saw him I thought, nah, just the atmosphere changed, like it was a really sort of apprehensive, scared one, but then when he walked in, everyone just sort of relaxed and realised that it was going to be nice.
There was actually another moment about where he was speaking about marriage and the way that you've got to look long term at things, like that a bad marriage can create bad relations for children, that can create bad problems in that sort of thing. And I think that's something that I had an understanding of, but I'd never probably heard put so succinctly. Just going, look, this step can lead to this step, can lead to this step, and you've got to look at things long range like that. So I think those were the two moments.
Marriage. Happy marriage, long-lasting intermarriage, relation with not just a physical attraction, but with respect to one another. So even some conflict comes because both sides you have deep respect of other. So therefore, the conflict can solve on human level, human way, or family level.
I'm considering getting married myself, so it was one of those things where you just, the weight of all those things, you sit there and you go, right, when you marry somebody, you don't just get that responsibility of, getting hitched to somebody, but you have that sort of thing. You've got to think, about things and And that was really interesting. It was one of those things where I actually just wanted to stop and just go, now, I'm thinking about getting married. My girlfriend's sitting up there, in fact. Let's bring her down. Okay, let's meet both of us. What advice do you have for us?
Many of the young people we speak to talk about this resentment and anger that the youth culture is being blamed for all the woes of society, and that it's coming from political leaders and religious leaders. You know, a group of young people can't walk down the mall without everybody saying, all right, those people in the caps backwards are the ones who are going to cause all the strife. So what do? They rebel, and they throw out, I guess we could say, the baby with the bathwater. Well, if those adults are going to say that, well, whatever good is coming from those adults, I'm not going to listen to anyway. It's all bad. I think we as an adult society have to really take on responsibility and accountability for setting up cultures and setting up a consumerist system that these young people are actually inheriting and are trying to work their way through. The drug culture is not a youth culture. The crime is not a youth-driven issue. When you actually look at statistics, when we look at suicide, we see that a lot of our young people are actually victims of a society that has put into place a whole lot of values that are problematic for them. So I think we've got to get away from saying it's peer pressure.
Your Holiness, our final question from up here before we might have time to ask some from the audience is from Tim.
Your Holiness, as an Aboriginal person in Australia, the process of reconciliation between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people has been very important. What do you think needs to be done individually and collectively to take the process forward? And a related but broader question, what role do you see for young people, not just in terms of the future, but also in terms of what they can contribute today? As an Aboriginal person, the process of reconciliation is really important to me. The future of the Aboriginal race really depends on the working together of the Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. And I think it's really important to hear what someone like the Dalai Lama says about moving the process forward and where we can go from here, and especially what young people can really do to work together to advance the rights of Indigenous people.
I think constant sort of meeting with Indigenous people and give them some kind of confidence. You are part of them in this.
It really interests me that the struggle of the Tibetan people is in many ways similar to the struggle of Aboriginal people for certain rights, rights to land, rights to autonomy, rights to self-determination, rights to identity and the freedom to express that identity and find that identity. And so for me to ask my question today about the advancement of Indigenous people's rights is really important to hear the Dalai Lama's answer to that. And I'm really hoping to be inspired to move forward for the cause of my people today.
Do I think I've got enough karma now? No, I think I've probably got a big bucket that needs to be filled still. But this is somewhere on my way. Now, if I can just get an audience, maybe with the Pope, maybe I can, get some other people together and really hold hands across America, sort of thing. I'll be getting on my way.
People in their thousands turned out to see and hear the Dalai Lama. Often they came out of curiosity. Many had only a little knowledge of this extraordinary man. All were affected. The Dalai Lama didn't come to convert people to Buddhism, but rather to offer a simple, transparent message of hope. Young people responded with enthusiasm and affection. They recognised that this simple Buddhist monk, like them, has a young heart.
Now already happened. Of course, I can learn. For disciplinary action, sometimes I little.
The lyric we desire. Love is endlessly counted on my last all rosaries, chanted for centuries in monasteries. Buddha, 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 Omane Padme. 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 Universal peace and your kindness, no ignorance and none of your blindness. Man charming, so me say, man charming, say, man charming, so me say, man charming, so the sound go.